Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Thursday, January 23rd. This is episode 165. Chuck Miketinac, Matt Roy on tap. Busy week. Sorry to miss Monday, but I don't think we could have gotten a podcast in on Monday with all the things going on between the inauguration and MLK Day and the championship game, which we won't talk about here, but congratulations to the Ohio State Buckeyes on the
well-earned, right? The gauntlet that they had to go through in order to win it all, that was a well-earned championship.
Yeah, but all the crap people are saying about this being the best college football team of all time, just stop. Miami was better. So in 2001, I know Bob's gonna.
It's a failed season.
What'd you say? Failed season?
Failed season.
I'm not even gonna get into that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Chuck.
The Ohio State thing. We should really dive into this with Bob and figure out why. Why can't you just be happy for Coach Day and the Buckeyes for winning a natty?
This is going to be
You know, that's nice that we won the national champion, but it's not the most important game.
It's so stupid.
I mean, it's nice. There's one little bracket, but the only thing that counts every year is beating Michigan.
That's not true.
Well, for other teams, yeah, they.
Okay. Well,
they're
Chuck,
focused on other things.
also welcome back to the land of the living here, Chuck. I know you were down for the count there for a little while.
I could have sucked it up, but I didn't want to take any more heat of infecting the rest of the newsroom.
I mean, it
seems to have already.
I think you already did.
Yeah.
Don was out. I apologize. Don was out right after that. Jack was out after that. So.
Did you have the norovirus?
I'm not sure what I had. I had the flu, but what was weird was I was starting to get sick before I went on vacation. I came back, I was fine for 2 days, and then I got something else. So.
Yeah.
I never get sick.
He and Jordan both have the lingering cough now, so I'm gonna be a ninja here and try and mute Chuck's mic whenever he goes to cough. I'm gonna see if I can do it, but apologies.
Well, I always tell my team to take their sick days while they're on vacation.
And hopefully they adhere to your preemptive strike there. Yes.
Dina's not listening, right? Anyway, we got a lot going on today. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone, subscribe to the YouTube channel, both News 4, Fox SA. Download, rate, review the podcast version. Helps us out a lot. We got a lot going on. 2 main topics, 3 different Spurs topics, and then one Cowboys topic, which is really the main crux of everything here.
Hopefully we can add something to what's going on.
First of all, congratulations to the Spurs. They just pulled off the win over the Pacers 20 minutes ago in Paris. So they now advance to 20-22 on the season, just past the halfway point. But more interestingly, R.C. Buford gives a small update on Coach Pop, Chris Paul, Mitch Johnson, answer a few questions on Pop this week while they're in Paris, France. We'll talk about the Pop of it all. If a little bit of French remedy can, help the Spurs' woes. They've lost 6 out of the last 7 coming into today before this win against the Pacers. Plus, go first half report card. 41 games now, 42 games down in this season. What grade do the Spurs get in their first half of the season as compared to last year? We'll go over that. Plus, Cowboys coaching search. Brian Schottenheimer, now the lead candidate, it seems like. Good move or bad? And the fall of a great American institution is what someone said about the Cowboys today. We'll get into that as well. No trivia today. I don't want to hurt Chuck with trivia today. So
thank you.
We'll get into Coach Pop first, since that was the big headline yesterday. So R.C. Buford gave a brief update, answered a couple of questions about Pop, who's been out since early November after suffering a mild stroke, is what they were calling it. This is the quote from RC, quote, "All I can share is he's attacking his rehab in a way that Pop, you've observed him for years. The same resilience that he's shown over the course of his career as a coach, he's approaching his return in his rehab in an incredibly unique way. The relationships that he had with our former players and the care that they're sharing with him is amazing, and his improvement continues." He was then asked if there's a timeline for Pop's return. He said, "I don't know that we have any way to judge the clock. Predicting what's to come is just a function of where Pop's rehab goes." So taking those at face value, don't know when Pop's going to come back. If he's going to come back, we assume that will be back at some point in some way with the Spurs organization. What do you take from RC's comments?
Well, I mean, again, I'm happy that Pop is progressing. Obviously, I think everybody is. It's, the questions that don't ever seem to get answered is exactly where is he at? What is he struggling with? What is he rehabbing from? And when is he going to come back? So, I'm sure the hope is that he can come back at some point. And, I'm just glad to see that, he has been talking to players. That I know
Right.
has been real, and he's been doing that for weeks. So, he is staying engaged, but what it takes to, guide an NBA team and stand on the sideline every night with the pressures involved and everything else, given with what he's had to deal with, I don't know that anybody is, certainly pressing the gas on speeding up a timeline or anything else. It's, the man, let him worry about his health, and I'm sure the organization is, and then whenever he comes back is when he comes back.
Yeah, you mentioned him talking to the players. Let's hear from Chris Paul and Mitch Johnson real quick about a little bit of expanding on that thought from Chuck.
I'm grateful for how he's doing, and I'm not even sure if this is public, but he calls. You know what I mean? He calls after games, and I talk to him, and he tells me what he sees, and I appreciate that more than anything because he doesn't have to do that, and he does.
Pop's health has been the priority since the start of this and until ... And so that's kind of how we and I take the approach. I want the best for Pop, and I want the best for this team, and however I can help is where I'll put my energy.
Yeah, so I find that interesting. We've known that he's talking to the players all the time. We just don't know what the role is for Pop right now. Is he just watching games at home and analyzing and then calling the players after the game, leaving them a text message, or are they going to dinners? Are they what role he's playing right now? We don't really know, but we do know that he still very much has his thumb on the pulse of this entire team.
Yeah, and again, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel here, right? I mean, Mitch Johnson's been on Pop's staff, and they're. I'm sure they're running the sets, and the axioms that were in place before are probably still in play. And so the biggest thing again is get well, Pop, and whenever you get ready to get back on the sideline, I'm sure they'll welcome you back with open arms. There's
definitely an adjustment period as well for a team like this when you have a voice that's been there for 27, 28 years, and now you go to Mitch Johnson. We were just talking about it in the other room when we were watching the Pacer game with the Spurs, and it's like Stephon Castle turned the ball over like 4 times within the first 6-7 minutes, and Pop, I feel like, would have gotten him out, but Mitch Johnson has a different way of coaching, so you never know what Pop would have done, or I think we can all assume what Pop would have done in those situations, but it's an adjustment for the players as well.
Yeah, it's again, it's got to be different. I'm sure you think about the Spurs right now. I mean, he's pretty much the face of the franchise. He's been here from the beginning, of all the winning big, I should say. So, yeah, I'm sure it's an adjustment for everybody, but they adjusted just fine today in Paris. I mean, what a performance.
Yeah, I want to get to that right now. They win the first game in Paris. Obviously, thoughts are with Coach Pop. Hopefully his rehab continues to go well. But they win the first game in Paris today, snapped the 3-game losing streak. They've now, coming into today, they lost 6 out of the last 7. Had some horrible second halves. Like against Memphis, they played 2 games against Memphis. In the third quarter, they were outscored by like 45 if you combine the two. The fourth quarters were horrible. They were just putting the Heat game. I think I expected them to lose that game because it's like if you're playing the Heat in Miami before going out of town to a Paris trip, it's like, okay, let's just get this game over with while we get on the plane. So I don't really look too much into that game, but they played really, really poorly ever since Don sat up here and said they could be the 5 or 6 seed in the West this season. They've been playing pretty dreadful. Today, though,
are you blaming Don?
I am blaming Don. This is all Don's fault.
Get those last lung butters out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Anyway, yes, this is all Don's fault. But anyway, today, though, that's what the team can look like. Like, that's the ceiling. That's what Spurs basketball is. Make some shots, shoot, 40%. I think at one point they were 60% and 50% from the field and from three-point range, respectively. That's the ceiling. Move the ball, play with effort, play extra effort on defense, play a full 48 minutes, and you beat the Pacers, who are a good basketball team, by 30 points.
Really good basketball team. And I think, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, this is the Pacers I'm talking about. They're one of the hottest teams in the league. I mean, they won 8 of their last 10. They stopped Cleveland's humongously long winning streak. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're a gritty, young team that has turned the corner, and the Spurs little brothered them today. I mean, they were running alley-oops on them in the third quarter. And
yeah, Wemby was ooping it to himself.
I mean, they really just stuck it to those guys today. And so you're right. I believe when you see a performance like they had today, how can you not be excited about, the way they had been playing up until the last 6 or 7 games?
Yeah, I put it out
But
on.
it's how can you replicate this day in and day out? Was it home cooking? Maybe they got some juice, because you have to believe that the people in Paris were, staunchly behind one of the locals that was playing. You can't blame them. So,
Right.
Maybe they got a little oomph from that. And all I know was that was really easy to watch today, the way they just basically little brothered those guys.
Yeah, 50% from 3, 60% from the field on the game. Wemby goes for 30, 11, and 6. I think you all get a little bit of juice. And he had 5 blocks, just to name a few. There was a stretch there where he had 4 blocks in 4 possessions, I think. Or actually almost got 4 blocks in 4 possessions. One of them ended up being a goaltend. But they outscored the Pacers 45-23 in the third quarter. And the third quarter has been their bugaboo. They have just been dreadful. They've had leads at half twice against the Grizzlies, and then they come out and get run out of the building in the third quarter. So it was impressive in the sense that I expect that from them. I want to expect that from them. And I tweeted it out before we came out here. It's so frustrating seeing a game like that, because you know that that's the potential. And then when you see a game like the Grizzlies, like how they played that second half, you're like, what the hell are they doing? You just can't stop the bleeding. You can't stop the hemorrhaging. No shots are going in. You're turning the ball over. Nothing's working. And you see a game like today and everything's working. So it's got to be frustrating being a Spurs fan, and even for us covering the team. And you're like, where the hell is that?
Right. And I think today was, it's easy to go, well, yeah, I mean, when they shoot 60%
Right.
on the floor, they're going to win every game like that. But that's a well-earned 60% from the floor. I mean, they attacked. As you said, they moved the ball. Yeah, you make open shots, but when guys are wide open, it's a lot easier to make open shots for sure. I mean, it was really a clinic performance today, and it'll be curious to see if they can replicate this again on Saturday morning.
They had 43 assists today.
It's impressive, right?
43 assists on, I'm trying to find.
And look at who shot the ball. Everybody shot the ball well, except for maybe Steph Castle. I mean, and it just goes to show you, too, a guy like, why am I drawing a blank?
Jeremy?
No,
Trey?
Golden State Warrior.
Oh, Harrison Barnes?
Yes, Harrison Barnes. What was he, 9 of 10 from the floor?
Yeah, he was
right.
really good.
And again, this is a guy that's talked about. He's not even looking for his offense. It's just when it comes to him, and a guy that gets it, in a lot of different ways. And it's nice you can have guys fill in like that maybe aren't necessarily the focal point of the offense, but they go out and run you 20 today just because they're playing freely, and in the flow of the game, they just happen to be around the basket and get them one.
They out-rebounded the Pacers 57-31 today.
It's a dominant
57-30. And that's what I'm saying. That's just why it's so frustrating to see the games where they just don't show up in the second half, because you know that they can. And you know that if they play with effort and want to, obviously you're not going to shoot 50% from 3 every game. You're not even going to shoot that in half the games. You're not going to shoot 60% from the floor. These shots are not going to go in. But even if they shot 30% from 3 today, I still think they would have won this game handily because of the effort that they put on the defensive and offensive side of the ball. So that's why it's a little frustrating. Do you think that a game like this, though, can kind of rejuvenate a team? It seemed like they were dragging the last 7 games, 6 out of 7. Obviously, one of the games in LA postponed because of the wildfires out there. Do you think that a game like this, a trip like this even, can rejuvenate a team going into the second half
Yeah,
stretch?
I think the trip as a whole really can. I mean, when you're talking about a bunch of young guys that, they've all got lives away from the court. I mean, when you're basically hunkered down together for a whole week and you're, 3,000 miles away from home, whatever the total is, and you're around these guys at not only charity events, but branding events, whatever it is, and a chance to, maybe build a better bridge with some of your teammates that maybe you don't spend a lot of time with. Yeah, I think that can pay dividends. And, it's been proven over the past, Pop has kind of used the rodeo road trip as that kind of a galvanizing force for team bonding. So, Wemby taking the team out to dinner, those little things like that can eventually pay big dividends. And, I mean, I think that's why Saturday is going to be fascinating to see if some of this stuff starts to look like it's paying for itself forward.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Wemby's going to start paying for dinner more often the night before the game.
Well, as long as you get those Louis Vuitton deals,
Right.
Dinner's on you, dude.
The Nike deal will pay for the dinners.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, they have another game in Paris on Saturday. We look forward to watching that. As far as them being rejuvenated by a AAA, you see it in a lot of sports. Like even, and I'll just use the Broncos for example because I pay attention to them the most as a fan. You saw they were 0-2 going into Tampa, and they had two games. They had a Tampa and a Jet, or a game in Tampa, a game in New York. And they took that week and just stayed on the East Coast. And they will chalk up their success to saying that week really galvanized the team, helped the camaraderie of it. Weren't around your family, weren't around friends at all. You're just around the guys. And when you have something like that, you can start to bond and really, realize that you're pulling the rope in the same direction.
Yeah, and I think today's performance is a prime example of that, right? I mean, nobody was up there, hoisting every time they got the ball. They literally shared. Everybody was moving. Whoever was open got the shot. And there was just a relentless – they just stayed after it. Even if, they had a couple of empty possessions and things weren't going their way, which didn't happen much today, they kind of just stayed the course. And, who knows, maybe those 3 or 4 days – had something to do with that.
And there was a stretch there. I want to say it was late in the second quarter where it could have started getting away. They were turning the ball over. I think they turned the ball over 4 out of 5 possessions. They weren't making shots. The Pacers went on an 8-0 run, and that's a moment when in the previous 3 games, the Pacers would have gone on a 20-2 run, or the Pacers would have gone on a 24-0 run, just like the Grizzlies did. Instead, though, you see all of them kind of calm down, figure it out. They're like, okay, we can stop this. They make 3 shots. They end up tying the ball game in the second quarter, and sure enough, they come out and blow the doors off in the third quarter. So
yeah, there were some
stretches that could have gotten away from them, though, and you saw them rein it back in,
and
which
Victor
was good.
dominating on both ends.
Oh, 100%.
A couple times where he blocks the ball, then he brings the ball up, and then he's alley-ooping to guys. I mean, got the full Monty today.
Literally threw an alley-oop to himself, which was insane. Last thing on the Spurs real quick before we get to the Cowboys coaching search. How do you grade the Spurs' first half of their season? 19-22. We'll just take today out of it. Just take the first 41 games. They got 41 games left halfway through. A+ being extraordinary, obviously. F being a failed first half of the season. How do you make you a teacher here? How do you grade the first half?
I'm probably, that's why they would never make me a teacher because I'm a little lenient. But based on what we saw last year and all the nonsense that we had to watch last year, game after game, and compared to now, it's much easier to watch now. I give them high grades. I mean, they've really turned this thing, considering how many games did they win last year?
22.
There you go. And they've already won 19?
Yeah, 20 now today.
How can you say that that's not anything other than a success based on what they did last year or didn't do?
Give me a grade.
B+.
That's what ESPN.com gave them as well, as a B+. Because it's relative to the expectation, right? They were expected to win. Their over-under was 36.5. Right now they're on pace for 39 or 38 if you take the first half and just transitive property it to the second half. I would put it a little lower. I would put like a B-, just because my expectation for this team is 500 at least. My expectation was a 41-41 record. I think a B- is good. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago before the 6 and 7 stretch, I would have probably said a B+, A-. But you see the warts with this team. They still don't shoot it very well. They still choose to take games off every now and then, or choose to take quarters off every now and then, which puts them behind the 8 ball, and then they have to try and mount these huge comebacks. So I would say closer to a B-. If they end the season 41-41 or 40-42, somewhere around 500, I think that's a rousing success.
I do too, because we've talked about this before, right? How backloaded their schedule is with road games, and so if they're going to make improvements as a ball club, they're going to have to do it on the road. That's not going to be an easy thing to do. So, we'll see.
Yeah, you've got Rodeo Road Trip coming up here in just a couple of weeks. You got the All-Star break coming up. There's going to be a lot of hoopla regarding the All-Star break. You got Wemby's going to make the game. Steph Castle's going to play in the Rising Stars game, I think, and he's going to be in the slam dunk contest. There's going to be a lot of hoopla around the Spurs and their young stars coming up. So we're going to see how do they handle the Rodeo Road Trip. First one for Chris Paul, first one for Harrison Barnes, first one for this squad as a whole. how do you handle the star power, the stardom that comes along with the All-Star break? So we're going to see exactly how they go.
Right,
But
or just the rigors of the All-Star
Exactly.
break too, right? Like you've got to, that's usually a time where a lot of guys get a chance to rest and really get away and step away from the game, rejuvenate. But if you're immersed in All-Star festivities for a whole week, that, you're literally right into the rest of the season after that.
Right. Let's get to the Cowboys and the coaching search that is really.
Get your cough back.
That sounds awful.
It doesn't.
Well, the good news is it came out. So
Ew. That doesn't sound good at all. Anyway, we're. No, I'm just kidding.
if you haven't gotten it yet.
No,
And by the way, remember we sat here and you said you better stay away from me because everybody's sick at my house. And then
And then
I was like,
and then
I'm scared.
and then you end up getting sick, and then I end up being fine.
It just goes to show you, never tempt the fate.
Just a strong immune system.
Right, there you go.
Anyway, so coaching update on the Cowboys. Rumors are swirling around Brian Schottenheimer. And since we talked last, that wasn't even a name that we addressed last Thursday on the podcast. And sure enough, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they met for 4 hours, 5 hours. Today, meeting again. And potential, there's reports out there saying that they might hire Brian Schottenheimer by the time our heads hit pillows tonight. They've already interviewed Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore was first. Obviously, they can't interview him again until next week. Even if they wanted to. I don't know if they want to or not, but even if they did, they cannot interview him again until next week. Robert Saleh, Leslie Frazier, both brought in for interviews. We don't know of any other names that have been brought in for sure for formal interviews besides those four. Brian Schottenheimer, Kellen Moore, Robert Saleh, and Leslie Frazier. Schotty, though, does seem to be the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to being the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. What do you make of that?
I just find it very strange. I mean, I think like a lot of people, right? I mean, if that's really where this is going, I would be absolutely stunned and shocked if that's how this ends up turning out. Having said that, Jerry has surprised people before with his hires, so it's not not outside the realm of possibility, but let's just wait and see how this thing all plays out. There's a part of me that thinks, well, you've already let this get to this point. There's still 4 teams that are playing football right now, and you have to assume that any of those coordinators or anybody in those organizations wouldn't be allowed to talk until after Sunday's championship games. So let's just see if this thing drags into next week. I would find it hard to believe that you could move on from Mike McCarthy and essentially then just hire his, a guy that's in the McCarthy camp. It
doesn't make sense.
Yes, I guess that's probably the best way to put it. Let's just see if this thing stretches into next week. Before I feel really comfortable weighing in on Brian Schottenheimer as head coach.
When you don't interview Aaron Glenn, and when you don't interview Ben Johnson, who were the two hot head coaching candidates, and they already took jobs, and you pretty much missed out on that sweepstakes. You missed out on Mike Vrabel because of your indecision. Obviously, I think he wanted to go to the Patriots, but that's besides the point. It doesn't make sense to hire Brian Schottenheimer right now. Like, if you're going to hire Brian Schottenheimer, at least have that exhaustive search. Wait till next week. Wait till you can bring in Kellen for another interview if you want it. Wait till you can bring in Cliff Kingsbury for an interview who has been linked to the job. Wait till you actually interview a Pete Carroll or whoever else you want to talk to. It wouldn't make sense. It's not like Brian Schottenheimer's Ben Johnson. People aren't beating down his door to make him the head coach of their franchise.
Right. And wouldn't it be, for him, everything that we've read that he wants to call plays next year. So even if he becomes the Cowboys OC, I mean, it just seems like, last week at this time, it was Dion, right? And then Dion ends up not even, from what we understand, getting an interview. So it's really hard when, there's a lot of marketing firms that are behind these coaches and their brand building and their name dropping and all of these different things that are going on. It's just hard for me to go all in until you get the word from the Cowboys, this is who we're hiring, because these things tend to run away and hide with themselves.
Hiring Schotty feels like hiring Jason Garrett, a guy that the narrative around the Garrett hire was someone that Jerry knows and someone that Jerry can kind of puppet around. it feels like that's kind of similar here. That, I mean, Don said it in the other room that it's, if you hired Brian Schottenheimer, then you're basically hiring Jerry Jones as your head coach. I don't know if you're doing that to that extent, but it definitely doesn't feel like they're hiring Brian Schottenheimer because they think he's the best one for the job. It seems like they're hiring Brian Schottenheimer because they got left out in the cold by Mike McCarthy, who didn't want to deal with Jerry's crap anymore. The rumors.
Yeah, by the way, where's McCarthy's
He might go to New Orleans.
Yeah, but why isn't, I mean, how come that's not a done deal? I mean, again, there's a lot of weird stuff going on where, you know, you think this is going to be all so seamless and the Cowboys are going to have their guy and the Saints are going to have their guy. It's just really odd how some of this is played out. And then, yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll just within the hour, right? His name gets thrown out there. So, and then we heard Rich Bisaccia, the Packers special teams coordinator. So all these names, again, why would the Cowboys turn down more days of just headlines on all this stuff?
Yeah.
And maybe they're testing the waters on some of this too, seeing what the response is from the public or the backlash on Twitter, which, by the way, doesn't seem all that positive.
Favorable when it comes to Brian Schottenheimer. Well, it also seems like a little bit, we've heard so many things about the Cowboys coaching search and that Jerry would just want someone that he can kind of toy with, or he, being Jerry, wants to organize the coaching staff. Maybe he's talking to Brian Schottenheimer because he wants Schottenheimer to be the offensive coordinator for whoever the incumbent, whoever the head coach is. Maybe he's talking to Jason Witten because he wants Witten to come in and be the heir apparent to whoever this next head coach is. Maybe it is Pete Carroll that he wants, okay, Jason Witten's going to be your tight ends coach and Brian Schottenheimer's going to be your offensive coordinator. Cool with you? It wouldn't be cool with Pete Carroll, but still, that's maybe what it seems like, is that they're trying to organize and develop a coaching staff right now around a head coach that they actually don't know who the head coach is going to be.
Yeah, I'm fascinated just like everybody else, but also too, when I think the thing that always stands out in the back of my mind is whenever you feel like there's a push and then you feel like, okay, where is this coming from? Who's reporting it? And why is this only a thing on Twitter right now? You know, I mean, that's where most of this is being driven. And so, you know, when you start seeing everybody in unison talking about one guy, but it's just a guy here and a guy there, or a person here, a person there, it's really hard to know exactly for sure what is going on right now.
Yeah, interesting comments today from Colin Cowherd on his show, The Herd, on FS1. He says hiring Schotty would end up being the end of the Cowboys as America's team. Let's hear from him.
We are watching the fall of a great American institution. He's not even interviewing for other jobs. Nothing against him. Nice guy. 3 jobs, 5 seasons, never been a head coach, never really been a top candidate for a head coach. So it just illustrates the directionless state of the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, a Super Bowl winning coach, to Deion Sanders, a very promising college coach, to an offensive coordinator in the building for a 7-10 team that didn't call plays. What are we doing? Dallas Cowboy fans, I'm not overreacting here. You would become the Jaguars. You are lost at sea.
I think our favorite line there is, I'm not overreacting
here. Fantastic.
But I mean, it's a reasonable point. The Cowboys have lost some of the draw, right? Like, I would argue that they're not America's team, and to a certain extent. Yes, the ratings are still great. Yes, we talk about them all the time because people care about them. But when you think like high-level winning, the Cowboys aren't that team anymore. They're just not. They have the longest drought in the NFC for conference title games. They just don't do that high-level winning anymore. And so if you demand all these headlines, we're literally talking about you because you're a dumpster fire, not because you're good.
But we're still talking about them. So that's the one thing that the Cowboys do have going for them. But, you know, I would agree on a lot of levels. I mean, you know, especially looking at the ratings the last month of the season just here locally. I mean, the Cowboy games were historically low. So, you know, maybe there is fatigue from all of this drama or the nonsense, not nonsense, but I mean, just the daily soap opera that seems to be going in every single direction. And when at least when you have that stuff going on and you're winning 12 or 13 ball games a year, you know, it adds a little sauce for the goose. But when you're out of it and you have nothing to really play for towards the end of the year, like they ended up having to do, you know, I think it's reasonable to think that they've lost some of their luster, and it also is, I think you can make the argument too that people are getting battle fatigue from all this.
I think so. And then when you look at the teams in their division, Dan Quinn cast aside by the Cowboys last year as kind of the fall man for their 48-point allowance to the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs last year. He's taken a team to the conference championship game. 7 of the players, whatever it was, from the Cowboys last year, now on the Commanders, now in a conference championship game. They broke their drought. The Eagles now looking to go back to their fourth Super Bowl since the Cowboys have last gone to a conference championship game. The Giants have won 2 Super Bowls, haven't gone in a little while, but still won 2 Super Bowls since the Cowboys had last gone to a conference championship game. They're being left behind by the rest of the NFC and especially the NFC East.
Well, I think what's fascinating to me in some ways is that look at how razor thin the difference is between A, not making the playoffs, but B, like if you're Washington, like if you would have told me that team that the Cowboys were playing in the last week of the season was going to be the one that was going to be one of the 2 teams in the NFC Championship, I would have told you were crazy. But that just goes to show you that, you can flip this thing pretty quickly. And I think that's, to me, what should give Cowboy fans hope is that look at how quickly Washington was able to flip it and get to where they are.
Yeah, but you have to look at how Washington flipped it. They got new ownership. They got a new coach. They got a new quarterback.
True.
Sure. They flipped it around. It's the same franchise, but everything else is different. And in Dallas, that's never going to happen. You're never going to have a new owner. It's always going to be the Jones family. You're never going to have a new quarterback, apparently. And the head coach.
It's going to be a while.
and the head coach is basically castrated from the time he signs the paper. So you're never going to have that kind of rapid turnaround because of all the constants that there are there.
Well, I don't know that the head coach gets hamstrung too much. I mean, it's not like Jerry's in there calling plays or anything. I mean,
that we know.
Some of this stuff gets blown out of proportion. But, yeah, I see your point. Your point well taken.
Anyway, we'll have more. We have no idea what's going to happen between now and Monday. Like Monday, they could have a head coach, or they could
have one today, right?
They could literally have one in the next 10 minutes. I have no idea, but we'll talk about it on Monday when we come back. Bob, you got anything before we get out of here?
Is Brian Schottenheimer coach a lot like his dad?
What, can win a lot of games, but not the big game?
Not the big game. I don't know. I
former Cleveland head coach Brian Schottenheimer,
big fan
Marty?
of Marty when he was in 1986.
Well, Marty won a lot of games, and Marty brought McCarthy to the league. So McCarthy brought Schottenheimer into the building in 22. But, guy's been around the game or been in the NFL off and on since the late 90s. So, he knows a lot of people. He's probably seen a lot of things. From what we understand, he was the guy that instituted the verbiage that the Cowboys are currently using. So, maybe he just needs an opportunity to do this. I mean, Jerry gave Wade Phillips that opportunity, and, Wade won a lot of games.
Marty was one of the best head coaches ever that didn't win a Super Bowl too. Like he was a really good head coach. He got a raw deal in San Diego. He went 13-3 and then ended up losing in the conference championship game or lost in the divisional round, I think. But he was those San Diego teams in 04, 05, 06 were all really, really good. I think he got a raw deal there. But Marty Schottenheimer was a great coach. And his son, is not on the same level of coach that he is at this point in his career. He's never been a head coach. His offenses have been good to above average, but not ever the best in the league. It's not like he's
right. Yeah,
it's not like he's Ben Johnson.
Correct.
He's not that hot shot offensive coordinator, but he is a consistently good offensive coordinator. It's just kind of, I think the thing with it is it took everyone by surprise that he's even being talked about as the offensive coordinator.
Well, I mean, again, I think if he's the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, but he didn't call the plays because McCarthy did, and now you've moved on from McCarthy. I mean, I think to Colin Cowherd's point, there's not a lot of sizzle there for the fan base.
Yeah, there's also it's not something that you see very often. We're going to keep the offensive coordinator that wasn't calling plays, that didn't do anything extraordinary, to us at least, to the public and to the press who have their finger on the pulse a little bit, but not as much as some of the others. Brian Schottenheimer, it's not like he was the hot guy that did anything extraordinary. It seems like he was just in the building for 3 years and can now be like, yeah, I was still here. I know Dak. I know him.
Right.
Let's do that. Any comments from?
That's all we got.
All right, sounds good. Well, that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. We're gonna get Chuck a lozenge, and then we'll hopefully see you on Monday. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We'll be right back here on Monday with more from the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. See you then.